Clerk, call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Devin Allen, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4. Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson is absent today, but we'll proceed on. Our invocation this morning will be delivered by Elijah Brown from the Bethesda Community Church in Fort Worth. Thank you so much for coming out today.
Most Heavenly Father, God, you are a God of mercy. You're a God of justice. You're a God of unity. God, your loving kindness just extends to all of us, Father. God, we come to you in this assembly seeking justice. We come to you, Father, seeking wisdom. And Lord, just unity as well. God, you have these things in abundance, and you're willing to pour them out on us. We pray, Father, that in justice, God, that, Lord, you turn the heart of those who seek to do us harm, that you turn them away from their wickedness, God, that you turn them towards good, God, that we would live in a land of peace and security. God, the cry of the poor, the disenfranchised, the broken, those who are hurting, those who are violated, those who are victims, the fatherless, the widow, their cries are always before you, and I pray, God, that their cries would come before us too, and that we would seek solutions and resolutions, Lord, to help them. And Father, finally, we pray for unity. We pray, God, that we as a people of Tarrant County wouldn't be defined so much by what we believe, but by the one whom we have believed, and him who we have believed in. So God, yours is the glory. Yours is the power. Yours is the dominion forever. And we seek your justice, we seek your wisdom, and we seek unity in this court. In the precious name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have one announcement relating to this agenda, and that deals with item number 8I3. This is under public health. It's termination of a lease agreement. We're going to ask that we hold that particular item until the next court meeting. Also, talking about the next court meeting, I want to remind the court that next Tuesday we do not have Commissioners Court, that our next court meeting will be the 15th. Thank you.
Tax day. Yeah. You know, some of those old habits are hard to break. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of September the 24th.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Proclamations. Commissioner Brooks, I believe you have a proclamation.
I do, Your Honor, and we proclaim a lot of things around here, but nothing more important than Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And I've got a proclamation that will recognize that, and it reads, whereas the mission of the Tarrant County Council on Family Violence is to develop and promote a comprehensive and effective community effort to reduce family violence and domestic violence homicides in Tarrant County. And whereas domestic violence programs, professionals, and advocates of nonviolence have joined together with the Tarrant County Council on Family Violence to provide the citizens of Tarrant County and the state of Texas with information on domestic violence, and whereas Domestic Violence Awareness Month provides an excellent opportunity for citizens to learn more about preventing domestic violence and to show support for the numerous individuals and organizations who provide critical advocacy, services, and assistance to victims. And whereas 1 in every 3 women and 1 in every 7 men will experience domestic violence during their lifetimes. Whereas domestic violence violates an individual's privacy, dignity, security, and humanity due to the systematic use of physical, emotional, sexual, psychological, and economic control and or abuse. And whereas the Commissioner's Court of Tarrant County actively endorses the mission of the Tarrant County Council on Family Violence and the Intimate Partner Violence Felony Prosecution Team of the Tarrant County Criminal District Attorney's Office to end the tragic cycle of violence and eliminate the intimate partner violence epidemic from our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Commissioner's Court of Tarrant County, do hereby proclaim the month of October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Tarrant County and urge all citizens to actively participate in scheduled activities and programs working towards the elimination of domestic violence. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this first day of October 2019, and I move for approval of this proclamation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
We have with us this morning several members of the Executive Committee of the Tarrant County Council on Family Violence. You know who you are. Would you please meet me at the podium?
And while they're coming forward, I would just like to echo the importance, I think, of this proclamation and of this Awareness Month. Every opportunity I have to speak, I talk about the fact that as individuals, we need to take every opportunity we can to express the fact that there's no event whatsoever that can ever justify domestic violence. And we need to say that for especially those folks who may have been raised in homes where there has been domestic violence and they may feel like it's okay, and it's not.
Couple of quick words. It's very awkward standing in front of all of you in silence while we're getting our picture taken, but we appreciate that. Michelle Morgan, current chair of the Tarrant County Council on Family Violence and vice president, One Safe Place. Number one, I just want to say 20 years of doing this work in Tarrant County as an advocate, and we do not have a stronger commissioners and judge for your support. You show up at events. You're there, you talk about it. Every year we're here. It shows in our community, and we absolutely appreciate your continued dedication to this effort. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Allen.
Yes. Well, so this past Saturday evening, I had the distinct honor of attending a reception honoring Dr. Alan Sachs, and presented this resolution of appreciation to him. I do want to read into the record for anyone who has spent any time in Tarrant County and Arlington, at UT Arlington, you know that Dr. Sachs is a legend, and he recently retired after about 54 years of serving as a professor at UTA. He was my professor.
And mine.
Yes, and he likes to take credit for any amount of success that his former students go on to achieve. I will add that not only was he my professor, but as I worked through my career in public service as a staffer, he would allow me on pretty much every semester to come back and talk to his classes and to recruit interns. So I think that says a lot about his willingness to open up opportunities for others. And I will say that he would not allow for the internships to be paid. He wanted for the students to pursue the internship opportunities for their enrichment and their professional growth. So with that, I will read the resolution into the record. Whereas political scientist Dr. Alan Sachs earned his PhD in political science at the University of Oklahoma and has been a proud faculty member at the University of Texas at Arlington since 1965. And whereas Dr. Sachs is beloved by his colleagues, former and current students in the community, and is highly regarded as an author, lecturer, radio commentator, and philanthropist. And whereas Dr. Sachs has shared his vast knowledge of politics and government in books, political journals, and magazines. And whereas his distinguished career has been highlighted by awards including the UTA Chancellor's Counselor Award in 1972, the Gertrude Gallaudet Memorial Award for Outstanding Teaching in the College of Liberal Arts in 1986, 2007, and 2008, and the University of Texas System Board of Regents Outstanding Teacher Award in 2014. And whereas Dr. Sachs's kind and generous nature is demonstrated through his numerous charitable contributions to a long list of organizations to benefit the community he loves. And whereas his dedication to seeing his students succeed and excel is validated by the caliber of people he has taught over the years who have gone on to great things, including mayors, elected officials, and public servants. And whereas Dr. Sachs's passion for teaching and genuine interest in the future of his students and his community will leave an indelible stamp of excellence that is sure to carry on. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby wish to express our admiration and sincere appreciation to Dr. Alan Sachs for his lifetime of educating and serving our community. In witness whereof we are hereunto set our hands and cause the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this first day of October 2019. And with that, I move for approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And I will add that Dr. Sachs is very appreciative that we would recognize him in this way. So,
Well, he is certainly a unique individual.
yes, he is.
Truly.
Well, and I told him one of the things is, you know, when he gets ready to speak, you never know what he's going to say. So you kind of just have to be braced, prepared for whatever.
And his students would all echo that same feeling from that standpoint. Next, Commissioner Allen, I believe you have another proclamation to give at this time.
I do. Before I read this into the record and present it, I just want to say that just as with domestic violence, that oftentimes with the loss of a pregnancy or the loss of a newborn or an infant, that sometimes it doesn't get talked about. And I'd say I have a couple dozen friends who over their lives have experienced loss, and it can be difficult to confront. And as a woman, sometimes you can blame yourself and you think, well, what more or different could I have done? So when this opportunity presented itself to recognize men and these women who are survivors of loss and support other women who are survivors of loss, then obviously I wanted to make sure that we talked about this. So with that, whereas in 1988, President Ronald Reagan designated the month of October as Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month. And whereas an estimated 1 in 4 pregnancies end in loss, and whereas most losses occur very early on, before 8 weeks or before a woman even knows that she is pregnant. And whereas pregnancy that ends before 20 weeks is called miscarriage, and after 20 weeks is called stillbirth. And whereas about 1 of 100 pregnancies at 20 weeks and later is affected by stillbirth. And each year, about 24,000 babies are stillborn in the United States. Whereas in Tarrant County, in 2008, Tarrant County Public Health created the Fetal Infant Mortality Review Team, consisting of medical professionals and community members who review the circumstances around infant death and issue recommendations to reduce fetal infant mortality. And whereas MEND, Mommies Enduring Neonatal Death, is a nonprofit organization established in 1996 to provide support and hope for families that have suffered a miscarriage, stillbirth, or early infant loss. And whereas MEND has 13 chapters in 10 states, hosts a nationwide online support group, is run solely by volunteers and funded 100% by donations. And whereas all services are provided at no charge to the families and facilitates charge to the families and facilities that seek their assistance. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Commissioners Court of Tarrant County, do hereby proclaim October as Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Month in Tarrant County and thank MEND for their work in breaking down the barriers associated with isolation and sadness of pregnancy and infant loss as they strive to turn those children's lives into legacies. In witness whereof we have hereunto set our hands and caused the seal of Tarrant County to be affixed this first day of October 2019. And with that, I move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And here to receive this proclamation to make some brief remarks are Rebecca Mitchell, the president and founder of MEND, Amber Zuckerman, Callie Stanley, Tina Russert, and Delana Barsanti, who all serve on the board of directors.
I'm Rebecca Mitchell. I'm the founder and president of MEND, Mommies Enduring Neonatal Death. Excuse me. And I just want to say thank you so much for acknowledging all of us who have experienced the heartbreaking loss of a baby, not only for those of us here today, but for the countless women and dads all over the world. And so we just so much appreciate the acknowledgement of our silent sorrow.
Thank you very much. Next, we have a certificate of appreciation, and this is for Elaine Close, and it was delivered last week. Elaine has served on our MHMR board for over 13 years, has been a very good and faithful volunteer, and we really appreciate the work that she has done for us, and with that, I'll move its approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Next, I believe that Judge Swearingen, I believe you have a recognition that you'd like to present at this time. Maybe or maybe not?
No, that was not my understanding, but it's for an employee of mine.
Okay, well, Daisy, come on forward. We'll get this taken care of. Daisy Espinoza is the clerk in Judge Swearingen's court and is receiving the 2019 Clerk of the Year Award from the Tarrant County Association, as well as the Texas Justice Court Judges Association and the Texas Justice of the Peace and Constables Association. And as I understand it, this is the first time that the same individual has won all these awards at the same time. So Daisy is to be congratulated for her work. And thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
That's outstanding, Daisy.
And I will move approval to receive and file this recognition.
Second.
A motion is second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Now, before we get into the employee recognition, what I would like to do is, today's the kickoff for United Way. And we've got a lot of things going on. We've got the hamburger sales downstairs that begins at 11. We have our training for our department leaders, team leaders, back in 504C at around noon, I believe is what I've been told. In addition to doing the hamburger, Natalie from my office has prepared a kind of a stained glass that we're going to auction off, and I think we're going to have a picture of it right there. And the auction will begin today. You'll actually be able to see it downstairs when you buy your hamburger. But we will continue the auction through Friday, and if you want to bid on that, please just call my office, extension 1040, and then it'll roll over all the rest. And you can place your bids up until Friday at 5 o'clock. Hamburgers. Oh, wait a minute. Faye and TD, where are y'all?
We're right here.
Y'all come on down. Leah, y'all, the whole United Way team, come on down. These are the folks that are kind of heading up and working with the whole United Way effort. This is, I don't know how long we've been doing this, but Tarrant County's been beating Fort Worth.
Yeah.
Since almost from the beginning. We lost that first year just barely, but we've whooped them pretty bad. In fact, we've whooped them so bad that we've now decided we're going to go out and challenge other cities to join the contest, because Fort Worth just ain't even a contest. We're beating them so bad.
We are kicking the campaign. This is the beginning of the campaign, Jay.
We're going to kick it off.
You're going to kick it off. That's for the end. You know, when you can bask in your glory when you once again reign victorious. But
Y'all need to help me out on this.
We are extremely appreciative, Judge Whitley. This is my last time to appear before the court before I retire at the end of the year. So I'll take this opportunity to say, as someone who has labored with this incredible team behind me and the rest of United Way to build an organization, a charitable organization that's worthy of the partnership with this governing body, I believe we've got there. I believe we have built for Tarrant County a United Way that is presents frictionless giving opportunities where everybody who contributes can be assured their money goes exactly where they want it to go. And as we've seen today already, there's an incredible need in this county in a lot of different ways. And we've just spent some time working with UNT Health Science Center and the Sid Richardson Foundation to identify those areas and double down on them so we can start putting to rest things that have challenged us for decades and start reigning victorious over some of those problems. But Judge, during the time that I've been privileged to lead this organization, I've seen you lead with moral courage, with candor, with wisdom, and with a pretty sharp wit. And I'm greatly appreciative of the opportunity to serve alongside you in my capacity as the President and CEO of United Way of Tarrant County. I'm thrilled with the Court of Commissioners we now have in support of us, our work, because it's team ball, it's a partnership. To say thank you to you and the rest of the team, I'd like to hand it over to one of our co-chairs of this year's campaign, Dr. Pat Linares. Doctor?
Thank you.
Dr. Linares, welcome.
Hello, how are you?
Great.
First of all, I just want to say thank you, both to the court and especially to the employees. This would not be occurring if it wasn't for the employees, wonderful people of Tarrant County. I am truly blessed to live in the best county in this country. So thank you very much, and we look forward to a great United Way campaign.
Thank you all very much for being here.
Thank you.
I want to say to this United Way team that you got to finish up the way you started out. You can't just come eat hamburgers
But they're so
and
good.
not support the other events
Yes.
that
And we have
we
it
do.
up our sleeve.
It's a competition here.
It is.
Yeah, I think you still owe us
just
lunch
eat
over here.
hamburgers is to show favor.
Pancakes too. Pancakes too.
A hint to the wise.
Thank you
We
again.
started this summer with the summer beach party. out
There
at
you
Summer
go.
Beach, so
And it's going to end well later this fall. So
Thank
just saying, be ready.
Be ready.
Be ready.
Thank you, United
ready.
Way.
Thank y'all. Now, a couple of other things. Again, we got hamburgers that start at 11 downstairs, so be sure and get your hamburger. We've got the auction. Now, if that wasn't enough, we've also got flu shots coming. And they're coming on Thursday. They're coming before something's coming on Friday. So, October the 3rd, Administration Building right here, this room right behind us, 503A. GK is going to be the first one in line.
Absolutely.
You're supposed to bring your name, your county badge with you. We're going to get you to fill out the consent form, and then we're going to poke you and give you the flu shot. Please take advantage of that. Get your flu shot. It's definitely worth it. And then on Friday, take it away.
Okay, who will come out and meet me at 5 a.m. Friday morning and meet WBAP Radio and Hal J and his group? They're going to do a remote broadcast all morning from our Empowering Seniors location. They're at Industrial and Airport Freeway at Campus West. And it starts at 5 a.m. The broadcast does. The actual event starts at 8:30. So they're going to be there all morning talking about it, and we're going to be interviewing. I'm going to try to get the judge to. I need to fill that 5 to 6 spot. So I haven't asked him yet, but I'm going to see which one of those.
Can I talk about anything I want to?
Sure. As long as you follow my script. Yeah. But we're going to have a great day. It's called Empowering Seniors. This is our 11th annual. We've got the radio crew from WBAP. We've got the Dallas Cowboy cheerleader alumni. This is a group of cheerleaders from the Dallas Cowboys that were cheerleaders primarily in the 70s. And they come out and do our event every year. It's a great bunch of ladies, and they have a lot of fun, and we have a lot of fun. So it's going to be, I think, a great day. We've got Scott Murray is also former sportscaster on Channel 5 will be there. And we've got Troy Dungan, who used to be a weather guy from Channel 8. He's going to be there. So we're going to have a lot of fun, and free food, coffee, whatever you need. We've got it, and a whole lot of vendors and a lot of entertainment. We've got bands and all kinds of groups that are going to be entertaining you. So 8:30 to 1:30, Campus West. They're right down from Trinity High School and at Airport Freeway and Industrial. So thanks.
Commissioner Allen, you have a couple of other things?
I do. First off, and I know we will have a robust conversation about elections a little bit later in the agenda, but I wanted to be sure to mention that October 7th is the last day to register to vote. And then I know the Elections Administration is hosting a number of citizens trainings and demonstration for the new election equipment. The two that will be hosted in Precinct 2 that are coming up is October 9 from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at the Kennedale Library, and then also October 16th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at the Arlington Sub-Courthouse. We do plan to host a number of other ones in Precinct 2 after this, the constitutional amendment election that's coming up. And then also I wanted to be sure to mention that the House Committee on Redistricting has 2 upcoming North Texas redistricting hearings. The public is more than welcome to attend and to testify. We do have 2 members of our state delegation, that state House delegation that serve on this committee. State Representative Matt Krause and State Representative Chris Turner. The first will be October 9 in Fort Worth. It starts at 4, and it's at TCC Trinity River Campus, 4th floor at the main building, and then also October 10 in Dallas, 4 p.m. at Dallas City Hall, 6th floor, City Council Chambers. And I know that if they haven't already finalized the schedule for some that will occur earlier next year, there will be some others in North Texas. So wanted to be sure to mention those important events. That's all I got.
Thank you. Now comes the time for our employee recognition. And again, as I say every month, this is one of my favorite times of the month because it is my opportunity to recognize the employees within Tarrant County that are celebrating their 5, 10, 15. This time we're up to 30, but we have employees within the county who have been here in excess of 40, 45 years. So there's some folks who've been working for the county since some of y'all come to this earth. For you rookies, for you 5-year folks, here's the way it goes. When I call your name or what sounds like your name or where your name should be in the alphabet, please stand up. I'm sorry, phonetics and I never got along, and so you're just going to have to be patient with me. Stand up and then remain standing until I finish that group, and then we'll recognize you, and then you can sit back down. So we're going to start with our 5-year employees, and we're going to start off with Yaquina Cobbs, Public Health. Okay, how close did I come? See, I do this as amusement for all the rest of you. Okay, give it to me.
It's Yaquina.
Yaquina and Yaquina, and you're calling that not even close?
They call me Q.
Well, if you'd have told me that earlier, this would have been a lot simpler. Because I could have handled Q. Thank you for your 5 years of service. Susan Daniel, Medical Examiner. I got that one. Tracy Dimple, Public Health, WIC. Tracy. Leanne Hazard, Medical Examiner's Office. Elva Martinez, Tax Office. Chastity Meredith, Sheriff's Office. Taylor Phelps, Budget and Risk Management. Melissa Randall, Public Health. Kara Tillman, Medical Examiner's Office. Marsal Vasquez, Public Health. Good turnout of our 5-year folks. That's great. Marisol, I was close. Y'all can sit down now. I know I always scare those 5-years. They'll never sit down until I tell them that they can sit down. Now for our 10-year employees, Pamela Bogus, Criminal District Attorney's Office. Yeah, she's not here. Judge Ruben Gonzalez, I saw him, 432nd District Court. Welcome, sir. Annette Higgins, Tax Office. Helen See, she knew where she was in the alphabet and she stood up. Now, how do you pronounce that? That doesn't look like the last wind I had here. Similar. Okay. Justice of the Peace, Precinct 1, Helen, thank you. Lauren Jernigan, Information Technology. Abrel
Pacheco.
Yeah, that's it. Facilities Management. Carla Savage, Facilities Management. Shannon Shaw, Tax Office. Leah Sparkman, District Clerk's Office. William Wessel, County Administrator's Office. Where's Bill? You not here? Yeah. Amber Wills, 432nd District Court. Thank y'all very much for your continued Now for our 15-year, Diana Davis, Information Technology. Manuela Gonzalez, Public Health. William Jones, Sheriff's Office. Cynthia Rangel, Human Services. Christy Benega. Yeah, I know I didn't do well on that one. I'm sorry. County Clerk. Jason Ware, Sheriff's Office. 15-year employees. Thank y'all very much. Now for our 20-year employees, Cynthia Holloway, County Clerk. Robert Brown, Sheriff's Office. Daniel Estrada, Sheriff's Office. Christina Glenn, Domestic Relations. Cynthia Smith, Domestic Relations. Jason Wheeler, Sheriff's Office. These are our 20-year employees. Let's give them a hand. Now for our we've had a great turnout today. And I would say that for the ones that I've spoken to over the weekend, I think hopefully everybody's going to be able to make it. Now there may be one that I think said that he was in the middle of a trial and wasn't going to be able to make it, and I think we actually moved him to November, so you'd never know that unless I just said it. But I was able to get a hold of all of them on Saturday. And usually I spread out, I leave messages, and it's kind of usually either this morning or yesterday when I get in touch with that last one. But I really enjoy having an opportunity to talk with those folks over the weekend because we're kind of out of our element. We're not in the middle of work with everything going on around us, and we can kind of just sit and talk a little bit. Sometimes I can get them to tell me stories. Most of the times I can't. They used to tell me stories, but then I told a couple of those stories, and that was the end of them telling me these stories. But it is fun to talk with folks and to just listen to them recount the time that they've had an opportunity to be with the county. Our first this morning is Laurel Blossom from the Domestic Relations, 25 years. Started in the DRO area as a receptionist, then a legal secretary, moved offices for a while, moved over to the district clerk's office for a while, and then came back to DRO where she started when they started the monitoring program, the 4D program. And we've got a great 4D program here in Tarrant County, and I think it's probably the best one in the state. Memorable moments. She said, I love the monitoring program. We were one of the first. We work hard to be sure that it works for everyone and works hard to see that things work. What she likes most is the people she's had a chance to work with, feeling like that she makes a difference. And working for the county, she feels that she's part of the people that she get a chance to work for. She believes very much in what she does. And she believes very strongly, as I think most of our folks do, is that working for the government, our job is to make people's lives better. And, coming from the private sector over, it's a different talent, it's a different passion. But that passion of trying to make people's lives better is one that I've encountered and seen over and over, and I see y'all demonstrate it every day. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. When I asked her if there was anything else, she said, I really want to feel like I'm making a difference. And I said, I know you are, and I know you will for many years to come. And she says, no, I'm retiring in October. And I told her she was far too young to retire, but she's, she wants to go traveling in one of the what we call the toaster you know, the little mobile. Have fun. Thank you for your 25 years of service. And when you get tired of being on the road, come on back. Thank you very much. Yeah, I was afraid that was going to happen. Next is Clarence Carson, Sheriff's Office. There's Clarence. Started out as a clerk at Belknap and worked his way up from there. Has worked probably at most of the jails, worked in the courts. Now I believe you said you're in the Juvenile Detention Center. Memorable moment, he said meeting his wife in jail, in the jail. Now, he was very quick to clarify that she was working in the Belknap area and then in the corrections center before she retired. He said, what I like most is the great people that I've had a chance to work with, the stability, steady paycheck that the county offers. Clarence has had a life of service. He spent 20 years in the Air Force before he came to the county. Clarence, thank you very, very much for your service to our country and the county. Next is Sharon Downs with Human Services. There's Sharon. Sharon started off in Human Services as a caseworker too, doing intakes, I believe is what you said. She's now the assistant supervisor over the intake team and has been that since 2013. Memorable moments, what she said was memorable moment to her was the visionary that kind of thought about and did the resource connection. And she says, you know, when you think about the resource connection and what that represents, is it's one place where people can come and receive many, many services. And we constantly look at expanding that. We now have veterans. We're looking at putting a veterans retirement home out there. We have veterans services. We have a veterans hospital out there. We have a lot of stuff going on at the resource connection. It is just a super concept, and you're right. The people who did think of that and worked with the state to make that happen were visionaries. When I asked her what she liked most, she said, I love the ability to serve our Tarrant County residents, to be an example to other counties. And folks, if you don't realize it, you are. I can't think of many areas, in fact, I can't think of any area that when we're talking about things at a state level or a national level, that Tarrant County isn't being held up as an example of the way to do things right. And I think a lot of that comes from your passion to do things right, regardless of all the red tape that may be in the way. You really try to find a way to make things work. When I asked her, you know, she said, I love the people that I've had a chance to work with, and she said, I really appreciate the opportunity to serve the folks of Tarrant County. Sharon, thank you very much for your 25 years. Next is Gregory Green, the Sheriff's Office, standing right there. Started out as a clerk in Belknap, moved to Cold Springs. It was in the booking out at Green Bay. He has, I guess you're back at the booking in the bond desk area. When I asked him about a memorable moment, this was before I had come on the court, the Cold Springs area had caught fire. The Cold Springs jail had caught fire. And I think that's back when they were still allowing smoking in the pods. And so I could see why that would be a memorable moment. He said, what I like most about Tarrant County is the camaraderie and the teamwork that he has experienced over the years. He said the people here at Tarrant County have always been willing to help in any way that they could. Gregory, we thank you very much for your 25 years of service. Next is Milton Kersher with the Sheriff's Office. There's Milton. Started out on the third shift, the night shift at Belknap, then went to booking. got promoted in 1999 and went out to the patrol division. From there, he was promoted again and went to training and to internal affairs. Then he got a promotion to lieutenant and went to the warrant division. And now I believe you're back in internal affairs. When I asked him about memorable moments, he said, you know, when you've been in a sheriff's office and you've been in patrol in the various areas that I've been into, there's a lot of crazy calls you get. He said the other thing that he remembered, and, you know, I've been, just so happened that there's been a couple of other times this past weekend when people mentioned FY 2000. You know, we all thought that the world was going to come to a stop when the calendar went from 1999 to 2000, and we were all up here and we were all ready, and everybody was ready to nothing happened. Well, we were ready. If it had happened, we'd have been there. Again, preparation is what we do to make sure that if something does happen, we're ready for it. And so I appreciate everybody's efforts. And while we can say nothing happened, it's still one of those things where as public and as a government, it's our responsibility to be prepared when those things happen. When I asked him what he liked most, he said it was the people, the friendships that he'd had a chance to develop over the years, and just the stability, again, the stability of Tarrant County and their government. Milton, thank you very much for your 25 years. Next is John Leggett with the Sheriff's Department. John's back there. John started out also on the midnight shift at Belknap, was transferred to the Corrections Center, went to the academy, went to the release desk as a deputy sheriff, went to classification where he, I think, was promoted to sergeant. Then he was promoted to lieutenant and went to the training academy, promoted to captain, went back to detention, and is currently at the bond desk, the grievance room, and over the property, I believe. John has worked with us, and Catherine and I, when we go out and visit the various shifts for United Way, and that's a little note that you'll notice we started today, so you'll be seeing us again here pretty soon. Memorable moments, he said, I've got a lot of different memorable moments over the years. It's just, you know, it's been a good time. He said the family atmosphere, even though it's a big employer, you know, Sheriff's Department's our biggest department. County, we have some 4,000 workers, but we never lose that family atmosphere. And yes, it's strongest within our department, but I also see it time and time again with people in other departments. We have a sick leave pool that people donate to. They don't donate that just for their own department. They donate it for everybody. And they look at helping their fellow employees out, and that's just one way that they do it. He said he's on his third sheriff. He's trying to train them all. That'll get you in trouble. And I said it, not him. But he said, I have really, really enjoyed my time with the county. And John, we appreciate very much your service to Tarrant County. Next is Cheryl Lauren. She's now with the Justice of the Peace Precinct 4. Stand up, Cheryl. She's worked in the tax office. Actually, you had worked at TAD before you came to the county. And I guess it was a couple of years after that you realized that, wait a minute, that's still TCDRS, so I've got 5 years in my retirement when I came to the county. She worked at Northeast when I was commissioner out there, and then went downtown and worked at the tax office, I guess, downtown from 2003 until 2007, and then went to JP4. She said, what I remember is that people that she's worked with have always taken time to help her, to teach her, and she tries to do the same now, and whenever she has an opportunity to work with people. She said what she likes most are the benefits, and again, the people that she's had a chance to work with and work for. So in her department.
Thank you, David.
Wilder, are you over there leaning on? No, Wilder's over here. McClellan. Okay. I thought, well, IT, you better go back and check because everything's probably just cut off. Not only work with, but also the public that she's had an opportunity to serve and help through, not only while she was in the tax office, but also with the JP. Cheryl, thank you very much for your 25 years. Now, for 30 years, actually, now I'm going to say actually 31 years. And I know that, now, Mike, you can tell David that no, you're not 29, you're actually 31. 29. Mike Amador with Facilities Management. He started out at the Tarrant County Convention Center before the county had sold that to the city of Fort Worth. He went on to Facilities Management as custodial, first as custodial supervisor, and then as assistant director of support services, and he's now assistant director of building services. So the 29 versus the 31. When we sold the convention center to the city, he stayed on at the city for about 6 months, waiting for a job to open up at the county, and then he came over to the county. And as some crazy policy that I'm sure the court back then said, the HR just came up with, because he wasn't with the county for a while, they deduct a year or 6 months or something from there, and so he's got 31 years service, and y'all can argue about that later. He said that the most memorable event, when we had the convention center, we had a hockey team that played in there, and as y'all know, there's this little thing called a Zamboni that is supposed to take care of augering the ice. Well, the guy driving it forgot to turn on the auger, and so he was running out after it, and I think he did a little slip and fall right on his pistol. He said one of the other memorable moments is when the American team played for the Davis Cup title in tennis there. What he likes most are the various tasks and events that he's had a chance to be a part of. The new buildings as they come online. When I mentioned, was there anything else? It was, okay, he was one of only 2 Zamboni drivers in the county. And now is the only one that's still left because Randy Parks is retired. Last 5 years ago when I talked with him, he said, they were trying to get the crime lab ready to go. He really enjoys the new position that he had taken then. Just recently, when I asked him what happened over the last 5 years, he's gone back and got an MBA from TCU.
Good for you.
And what's important about that is he had a grandfather who had worked at TCU, and he said he always said he wanted him to get a degree from TCU, and so he's gotten that degree now. He said this last year, or in 2015, I guess, he had the opportunity he and his wife to go to North Africa and Europe for 3 weeks, and that it was really a life-changing experience, one that he wants to go back and have an opportunity to do again. This is a county family. He works for facilities. His wife is working for AgriLife. His son is working in the tax office. And his daughter is working for Tom Wilder. Now, it sounds like his daughter's the one that got the worst end of the deal. So it's really a family affair. He said in closing, it's really been special to have an opportunity to work with Mr. Phillips. Thank you very much, Mike, for your Next is Patricia Cannon with the 153rd District Court. There she is. Started out with the district clerk with Tom Hughes. Worked in the drug and gang unit for a while, then worked for Judge Everett Young. She was actually the first civil auxiliary coordinator, and because of that had an opportunity to work with all of the judges. Then she went to work for Judge Ken Curry, and now is working for Judge Susan McCoy. Memorable moments, stories that she can't tell because they're still living. See, I used to be able to coax those stories out of them, but after I told one or two of them, they won't do that. Other memorable moments is she said, I remember when basically the courts all changed. They went from Democrat to Republican. What she likes most is working for the public, being able to help people. The way that the judge mentors to the interns that come through in the summer and just moving cases along, just really getting things done. She transferred here from Eastland County, where she had worked for 5 years before coming into Tarrant County. 5 years ago, she said the new judge was great. At that time, she had a girl who was 11 going on 21, and now that daughter is a senior, is doing the college tours, although she says she's going to A&M. But she is at least, she wants to be a veterinarian. So she's also at least gone and visited Texas Tech and OSU. And I told her, well, don't forget about LSU, because they got a good veterinarian school too. And so that she might want to, consider that too. Just been a great 30 years, and Patricia, thank you so much for your service. Our final person that we're going to recognize is Jermaine Woolridge. Elections. 30 years of service. She started out in the election area. She's currently doing election day polling places and helping find the judges that work in all those places. Memorable moments. In 1989, she had a 4-year-old son, and today, now this was, I guess, 10 years ago, I think. Yes, it would have been 10 years ago. She had a 5-year-old daughter. Now, I'm going to get this straight. Well, let me cut to the chase. Her son has a 15-year-old son, and she has a 15-year-old daughter. And they are very competitive. So the son is very competitive with his aunt. She has she's had an opportunity. We're going to get back to this. She has worked with, I get confused at times.
Yeah, you do.
She has had an opportunity to work for 2 great elections. See how some of these notes are 10 years old. She's now breaking in her 3rd administrator and doing a fairly good job. He's still a little rough around the edges, but we're going to give him a little bit more on-the-job training here today. When I talked with her 5 years ago, she had a 10-year-old grandson, and she had a 6-year-old grandson, and a 10-year-old daughter who wanted to take her mother's job. And is constantly prodding her mother to tell her who she votes for. And her mother she constantly tells that daughter that no, that's between me and me, not between me and you. She said the department has made great progress in technology, and that's really the case, and we appreciate very much everything. So now we move forward to today. She said the 15-year-old grandson and the 15-year-old daughter are both very athletic and are very competitive. And so sometimes it's a matter of, okay, we got to, and then she said, and then I have the 11-year-old grandson who's just there. He enjoys the games, but he doesn't care whether he wins or loses. He just enjoys the game. And she said he is an excellent example, and sometimes I have to kind of, keep the 15-year-olds apart and point to him and say, enjoy it. Enjoy just the game. She said, I love the new equipment and the opportunity that we're going to have in going to the boat centers. Jermaine, thank you so much for your 30 years of service. I admire you even more for being able to handle that 15-year-old, either one of them for that matter, because I've got 7 grandkids and another one coming on, and I'm having enough trouble with the 10-year-olds, and I can't imagine what they're going to be like when they hit 15. 635 years of service, and folks, it's been passionate service. And I want to thank you so much. We have refreshments back in 504C, and they'll take your picture and give you a pen. And we wish that we could do more than just give you a pen. We just want to thank you again for the way you treat yourself and treat the people that come before you, and the professional way you do your jobs. So thank you very much.
About a year ago,
in Tarrant County, so just let me know so I can point you.
Dang it. Don't get there. Start.
You know, I have not seen
It's terrible.
you had that order?
I move that we receive and file report employee recognition.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Now, let me kind of get everything out of the way. Court members, you have before you the consent agenda as amended by Mr. Manius.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, we have 3 additional items for your consideration this morning. The first, we're requesting that the Commissioners Court approve the Court 2019 holiday season meeting schedule as attached.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion to second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, on item number 2, we're requesting that the the Commissioners Court approve and sign an order prohibiting outside burning within the unincorporated areas of Tarrant County for a period of 90 days from the date of this order or until repealed by the Commissioners Court.
Move for approval.
Second.
Maybe it'll rain then.
Yeah, have y'all all got your umbrellas in your cars?
I have a question.
Yes.
How do you pronounce? Is it Keach Byram Drought Index? How do you pronounce that?
Yes, that's how you pronounce it.
I wouldn't take that to the bank.
Okay.
Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the court, we go to item number 3. We're requesting that the court approve interim funding for the continuation of the Criminal District Attorney's bilingual Spanish language victim assistance program for a period not to exceed 90 days. The estimated maximum cost is $18,000.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Today I come to the court to ask for approval of the permanent branch early voting locations for the joint and general special elections of November 5th, 2019. The proposed schedule is attached to the communication.
I move approval for the sake of discussion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Now for the discussion. We have some audience participations that we will get to before we have our vote. Questions from the court?
So last week I had asked that we table the vote to look more into UTA not be considered as a polling location. Can you speak to why UTA was not considered?
And again, there are 2 different schedules traditionally that we've used. One for even years, governor and presidential elections, that includes the campuses as temporary sites. The one we've used in years like this one does not include those campuses, and it's pretty much the same list that we are bringing to the court today. If you look on the schedules on 2015 and 17, the list is almost identical except for a couple places that were not available in each one of those years and were replaced. So we're going with the exact service that we've provided voters on elections of this kind.
Now, in addition to that, you have had Tarrant County College request 5 additional locations on their campuses for this off-year, what I call an off-year election, odd-year election.
Correct.
And at that point, anyone can request one, and then as the court, we would determine whether or not we were willing to grant that request. And at the same time, since it is a request and not one that we have selected, you have given them a price which includes all of the costs that will be associated with, and that's what they will actually be charged, what the costs were for holding that particular polling place on the site.
Correct, Colonel. The only thing I would add to that to clarify is that they had the authority to ask for additions because they have something on the ballot. So an entity that is not holding an election cannot come in and say, I want to have a polling place here. That's conferred to them as part of their authority for calling an election on the bond they have.
Okay, so the reason then that TCC was granted that was because they've got a bond election.
Correct.
And two, they requested those additional sites. And then the cost that they were quoted was the cost that will, in time, the cost of the labor that we're going to have to hire to furnish that particular
Correct, Your
location. Okay. Again, though, there's been a lot of stuff, I guess, kind of floating around here. So I want to be sure I understand what you just said. In the off-year elections, the odd-year elections, when we're not electing individuals, but we're simply voting on either state propositions or bond elections, then in those situations, we have not in the past had early voting places at individual campuses or educational facilities.
Correct.
I shouldn't say educational because schools would get into that.
Temporary
But in
locations.
college time,
Yeah,
it's
but
temporary
we're all
places.
following you on that, yeah.
So that is what we're looking at in this November 2019 election. The next year's election, the 2020 elections, first will be the primaries, and the primaries are paid for by the parties.
Correct.
And so to some extent, the parties will help to identify where the early voting locations will be.
Correct. We'll work with them, but
We'll work
again,
with them.
our main goal is to try to keep consistency. And so the starting point of discussion is always, this is what we used last time. Is there any reason at all to change it?
And that will be in March, and that will be in the current year budget of the current year that we're entering into.
Correct.
The November 2020 general election will be in our next budget cycle.
Correct.
And so for, to say it is not, or the November 2020 election, we don't have it in our budget to vote someplace, is not true because we haven't passed our 2020 November election yet.
Correct. And in fact, the usual rhythm of this is that our office comes around this time, September, to bring the list to the court. So the list for 2020 wouldn't be up here for you to vote on until mid to late next year. Right. So it's not that there is no plan to do it. It's that we're not at the stage of even planning yet that. Now, you tapped into something I'd like to clarify because there may be a possible budget impact. We'll probably come to court way earlier in April and ask, how do we prepare the budget? Because something changed that's making me ask the question earlier.
Well, the other thing that changed was that in the past, if we could have temporary voting locations and we could vote in a particular location for 3 or 4 days for early voting, and then we could move around, and we had about 4 or 5 of those, I believe. 6 of those in the past. But the past legislative session, the legislature came in and said, if you're going to do an early voting location, you've got to do it the same time that all the rest of the locations
Correct.
are being handled, and for the same length of time.
Correct.
So we can no longer do temporary voting locations, and that's what we've done in the past when we went to universities.
Correct.
We went and we'd go for 3 days, and then we'd go to another one for 3 days, and we'd kind of move around from that standpoint. So as we approach the budget for the 2020 November election, if we choose to add the universities, which in the past have been temporary, then they'll have to be full-time. They'll have
Correct.
to be for the full
2
period of
weeks.
time. And we all need to understand that, as will be the case in this November, and likewise will be the case at the primaries and the case in the November 2020, on election day, an individual can vote anywhere in the county that there is a polling place because of our vote center approach to doing this.
That's correct.
So a lot of the information that you may have heard with regards to the 2020 elections is just not necessarily the case. We won't know until we get to 2020 and begin looking at those elections, will we know that. But as far as this November 2019, we're doing as we have done in the past, with the exception of Tarrant County College, which has said because they have a bond election, they want locations on all 5 of their sites, and for that, we're charging them the actual cost of the supplies, and the folks that are going to be there.
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay.
Bottom line, this court has demonstrated over the past several months by the adoption of vote centers, by the purchasing of new elections equipment that provides the voters with a paper trail. We have demonstrated that we are willing to go the extra mile to make sure that voting is convenient, it's accessible to all, there are no barriers to being able to vote. That has been the position of the court to this moment, and that will be the position of this court going forward. Election locations have not been chosen for the primaries or for next year's general election. I will commit to you that I will do everything conceivable to make sure that there are voting sites on the campuses of our universities in this country.
Commissioner Fickens, did you have any?
Yeah, last year, when there were voting sites for those 3 or 4 days at different universities, did the county pay for that or the universities?
The county, Your Honor.
County.
With the rule we had of splitting the costs according to the sharing, but in essence, the county paid most of it.
Can you share briefly, Hyder, aside from us evaluating a previous elections list and saying, okay, well, this is what we used for such and such election, what other factors are taken into consideration when determining whether or not to use a site as a polling location?
Well, the most important guideline comes from the Department of Justice, the accessibility rule. So physically, the polling place has to be accessible to voters specifically, and this is where the biggest challenge comes, voters with disabilities. So you have to have the right doorknobs, the right ramps, the right kind of parking, the distance between, the place where you park and the place where you vote. These are all considered in saying, okay, this is physically a good location that we can use. We try to avoid switching out of places because people are used to going to a certain location. So I have not found in the last at least 8-10 years that I looked at any changes where we dropped locations. What we could be looking at is as we move forward, if there is a need to increase, if anything. But I haven't found any changes except for availability of locations. Like at some point, the Mansfield Subcourthouse, the last couple of years, there was a more time we had to move out, move back in because they were doing some construction on it. Other than that, again, consistency is key for voters to show up.
Sure. Can you also speak to our ability as a county or the administrators of elections to tell a site location that it must be made available for an election?
The Elections Code mandates that public buildings have to be made available. So that's the one leverage we got when we go to private locations. We can't mandate a church or a private building to say, we have to be here. And so there was one case that was discussed a lot this year, All Saints Church. We're no longer there. It was told to us by management the location is not available, so we had to move out and find another one. And that's just unfortunately the case.
Sure.
So universities, because if it's a public university, we could dictate that we're going to be there, If it is a private university, we could not.
Correct. That's my understanding. If any cases in a area I'd like clarification, I'd probably turn to the DA and say, what do we do at this point?
And if we're going to select universities in the future, given the fact that it's going to be for the full voting period of time, then, I mean, the problem that you have in universities, in my mind, is you would have a couple of buildings that might be very accessible for parking purposes, for handicap purposes, but usually it's going to be a little bit more difficult because you've got student parking lots all over the place that you're going to end up having to cone off or to reserve off locations for voting if you're going to, because it needs to be the public, not just the students at the university.
Correct. And one of the considerations we need to have is that when we talk, and again, I don't want to get ahead of a discussion that has not even started. Thank you all for bringing that up before I did. But we don't want to put a location in a place where it's, in practical terms, difficult to use by voters. So you don't, I mean, as attractive as it may sound to have a polling place in the AT&T Stadium, you have to park probably a mile away and walk in. And so it's difficult, it's slow. So in practical terms, voters may tell you, I mean, it sounded like a great idea, but it's unusable. And so that is going to be, I'm anticipating here, part of the discussion with colleges that's going from 3 days or 4 days to 2 weeks, collide with at some point over the weekend or a football game, things like that have been mentioned already, I've seen on social media. It didn't work for people during the weekend because they were unable to park. It was just difficult to access. And so it sounds like, I don't know, I want to wait until we have that discussion with the campuses to see what does it look like for 2 weeks in a row and not just 3 days that are contained. And then we'll bring the elements of those discussions to the court when the court brings it up for discussion to consider.
Well, and I appreciate you for stating that, Hyder. I've had discussions with President Kabari at UT Arlington, and I'm not sure where the miscommunication was, but to my knowledge, they weren't directly consulted about them serving as a polling location for this particular election. Perhaps that's because in years past, with off-year elections, they were a temporary location and not utilized in that way. However, now that temporary locations are no longer a thing as of September 1 with the new law, I'd like for them to be evaluated as a polling location. And they've expressed a willingness to figure out, you know, what needs to happen. I understand we're talking about availability, we're talking about cost and other things, but they want to have that conversation.
And the only thing I would say, ma'am, just to make sure it's said explicitly,
sure,
there seems to be a tone around this discussion of the county is not is planning not to do it when
right.
we have not even arrived at the stage of planning or thinking how to do it. So it's very important for people to understand that we are not planning not to do it. We just haven't started planning.
And you're talking about the 2020.
2020,
I believe
correct.
She's now talking about the 2019.
Right, and 2019 wasn't even in the plan to begin with because it was part of the usual
Universities have
so
never
they were
been in.
never even asked in 2019, you know, because we've never been there in the office.
And that's an important distinction to make because we're dealing with multiple things here. We're dealing with
right.
new election equipment and vote centers. We're dealing with a new state law. We're dealing with off-year elections versus even year elections. So there are a lot of moving parts to this
right.
that I think, you know, obviously we'll need to make sure that we clearly articulate that to the public so that we, well, I certainly since Friday morning have gotten multiple calls, emails, you name it, about this matter because the perception was that we were excluding opportunities for people to access the ballot box, which that certainly is not the intent. I trust that that's not the intent. But moving forward and for this November 2019 election, UTA would like to be evaluated. So please let me know how I can help in facilitating those discussions.
Well, we're in a really short time here. We got 34 days to election. We're 2 weeks and a half away from the beginning of early voting.
I understand.
So the question will be what to do with the list. Well, I'll look into it, definitely. But if we...
So the question becomes, if we're looking at UTA, so is that a decision the court needs to make today in order to give you the time to do you're talking about early voting?
That's right.
So do you need that decision today?
I would like to have at least this list approved today.
Here's what my suggestion would be on that, and Commissioner, you can tell me whether you would agree or disagree,
Okay.
is that, again, for 2019 in the off-year elections, we made no changes from, or only because maybe this church, because of that request. UTA was not considered in 2017 or in 2015, and so in putting it in 2019, that would have been the change. So if UTA, just as if TCC, if they want an early voting location, I would suggest that they can have one, but that it will cost them the same amount as it would cost TCC for the 5 locations that they're asking for. And so, and that's just for the 2019. When we get to 2020, there'll be an entirely different and new conversation, and we may decide that of the 40, what we're going to have to decide, I think, on that time is whether the ones that were temporary in the past at no cost, are we going to increase the number of early voting locations, or are we going to keep them the same and move them around? I think we will find, and I'll ask that question as we get closer to 2020, that we already provide more early voting locations than Dallas County and maybe more than Harris County. So we're going out of our way, I believe, to have early voting locations. But I would suggest that with regards to the motion that is on the floor right now, that we could do one of, right now UTA is not included. If we wanted to amend that motion to say that if UTA wants a location in this November 2019, they can have one, but they have to pay for it. And the cost of that will be approximately $11,000 is what we've quoted.
$11,500 is the number we estimate.
$11,500 is what we have quoted to TCC. And so if they want a location, then they, as long as they're prepared to pay the $11,500, then I'd say fine.
May I add something? I'd like to just caution that I want to consult with the DA's office in the state, because UTA and other colleges are not entities on the ballot. And I don't know, we can say, open a door here to say entities that are not a canvassing entity calling for an election can start saying, well, then I want to have a place here, I want to have a place there, and I'll pay for it. I'd like to ask that before we can confirm that we can do something like that.
And I'm probably okay with that, because the other thing that I guess I would just add is, I think we don't just find all of the poll workers that easily.
Sure.
And when you add that, you add quite a few additional poll workers that somebody has to go out and recruit. Commissioner Fickles.
Okay, I've got an issue with where we're headed here. When we approved the voting centers, Commissioner Brooks added to the motion that there would be no voting centers closed, correct?
Correct.
Correct. You called me 10 days ago and told me you're closing 5 in precinct 3. Okay? Before we start adding voting locations that we're paying for, I want to get my 5 back to precinct 3. Then if you want to add some more and you've got the financials to do it, fine. But I want to get my 5 back before we start adding more that we're paying for.
Well, before we add the 5 back, I'd like to know why they were closed.
That was a list that was brought last week, Your Honor, and they have different reasons, most of them construction or physical availability issues of the buildings.
And I had one that was eliminated. That's because it's a private entity and they did not want to serve as a location.
And I had one.
And we tried, and this is our usual process, find a replacement location. If you go back again on the court agendas for every year, there's always a list of, this was a target, these were the ones physically unavailable, and we were not able to replace them, so the final list is the one that's brought to court with a detailed explanation as to each one of those cases, why it happened. So, again, it was...
We ran out of time.
Well, we have run out of time. Okay. And I guess what I'm saying is right now, if you're saying now you want your 5 back,
I'm saying if we're going to go open up some more and pay for them, I want my 5 back first. I want you to find me my 5, and then you can go do that.
Well,
So that's how my vote will reflect that.
Well, but it is not clear at this point, right? We would be checking with the DA's office on whether or not, with this UTA conversation, whether or not that they would be paying for it or not. So we don't know that yet. I mean, and I get your point, but I'm saying, just to be clear, we don't know that yet.
I understand. But we don't know what they want to do. So
I understand what you're telling me. What I can tell you right now, standing here, is that we made every effort we could to find alternative locations in each one of those precincts. And we couldn't find any. That's why in all 4 precincts there was a number of locations that were not included. We'll certainly make another effort, look at it if that's the court's desire.
Okay, I guess where I'm going to come from on this is this. Given what Commissioner Fickus has said, given the fact that we do have some timeline, given the fact that UTA has never been in the past considered a location for our off-year elections, again, we are not electing individuals. We are simply voting for propositions and or bond elections, and UTA doesn't have one of those. Then I'm going to support the motion as it has originally been stated, which, if I want to recap it, make sure I understand how it's originally been stated. We're approving all of the locations here. We are approving the 5 locations that TCC has agreed to pay for. And is this today only including the early voting, or is it also including Election Day polling?
Only early voting. We did Election Day last week, Your Honor.
Okay, so that will take care of all of the elections for the November election.
Correct. And we have started public test and logic and accuracy today.
So then I'll support the motion as it stands right now. Now, we've got some people who want to, does anybody else?
I'll support the motion as it stands right now as well, because there are at least 4 universities in Tarrant County: UTA, Texas Wesleyan, TCU, and
Tarleton.
Tarleton.
Okay.
And 3 of those are in Precinct 1. And 2 of the TCC campuses, 2 of the 5 are in Precinct 1. And I don't want to get into treating universities differently. What we do for one, we should do for all.
And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I will say, just because that's the way that we've always done it doesn't mean that that's the way that we need to do it for the future. So if members of constituents of Precinct 2 have spoken up and shared that they would want for UTA to be evaluated as a polling location, then I have to honor that. So if we're moving forward with the motion as it's presented, then I will vote accordingly and for my constituents.
At this time, I'm going to call on audience participation. And the first is Pam, is it Durham? Please state your name and your address, and then we can go from there.
My name is Pam Durham, and I am at 2320 Lipscomb Street, 76110. I am here, and I appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion. It did just come up quickly that we were eliminating college campuses, and there is quite a bit of confusion out there as to why it happened. But I want to reiterate what Commissioner Allen said. Just because we didn't do it in the past is not a reason not to do it in the future. We are in different times, and especially in the election process. I appreciate your efforts that you have made to make sure that they're convenient and accessible, and that we have gone above and beyond. But we were here in August speaking to you about voting centers, and you did say we weren't going to close any. You did say that we were going to to make sure that people had access. That was the consensus of the public testimony and the Commissioner's Court at that time. And so then all of a sudden we hear that we are not going to have this happen on our college campuses. We're setting a dangerous precedent because the primaries that are of extreme significant value come up March 3rd, which is just a few short months. So the students are going to be saying, oh, we can't vote here anymore, because they've been voting the last 2 times, and they're saying, oh, we can't vote here anymore. And then they're going to come up and they're going to say, what's happening March the 3rd? So I would like to see you reevaluate these. We haven't done it in the past, so we're not going to do it in the future. I am a little confused by what was said because we talked about the budget being the same for March the 3rd in this year's budget and whether you budgeted for that. But I heard you say 2020 election being November and that would come up later. We are really close, so I am here to ask you to consider making sure that all of the universities have early voting locations at the university level for the primaries, and that you put that as a priority for making that decision now. If we knew back in August that this state law was changing, and that the budget was going to have to change. That was not addressed, but I am asking you to address it now for March the 3rd.
The party pays for the primary.
Excuse me, for the primaries?
The Republican Democrat parties.
And that you will not have any say we will not have any say over where those.
I guess they can go there.
They will be deciding.
We work with them on the location, so that doesn't mean we do have say. I mean, we are going to make suggestions, but the parties do pay for that. And so, I think as we look, and remember that sometimes in those primaries, you may have a Democratic primary location one place, and you may have a Republican in another. So again, the parties have great influence over what happens in the primaries. When it comes to the November elections, which will be in our next budget year, that is where the county and the Commissioner's Court has the decision as to where those are.
So I'm asking you that whatever evaluation and whatever say that you have for the March 3rd primaries, that is done at this level now, and not wait for another month or two for that to happen. So
we can't do that now because what we're talking about now is only the November 2019 election that we're fixing to come to. In working for the 2020 primaries, we have to work with the parties in that regard.
And I'm still reiterating, I understand that the motion before you is for November 2019. I still think you're setting a dangerous precedent by going on past instead of future, but I understand that we're late in the game to try to change that. But I want you to take a forward step for March the 3rd and get that discussion going now.
Get it going sooner than later. Not when you say now, you don't mean today. You just mean
correct.
Sooner than later.
Yes, don't wait until 3 or 4 weeks before early voting starts and say, well, what are we going to do about this?
Okay. You already have my commitment.
That will happen.
We need early voting at all the college campuses March 3rd, as well as going on for each election from now on. 19 is pretty much a done deal. I can see that. But in 2021, let's don't say we have to do it because that's the way we did it in the past. I say open them all up again for early voting. Teach our college students that they have access to voting rights as well as the faculties all the time. Thank you.
Next is Deborah Spell. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Deborah Spell, 217 Ironbark Drive, Arlington. Good morning, Judge Whitley and Commissioners. I testified a few months ago in favor of the vote centers for Tarrant County and was elated when it was granted by the state. And there's a bit of confusion this morning, as we all know. But I was disappointed to learn that because of House Bill 1888, that requires all polling locations to be open 12 days, that college campuses were at risk or not going to be able to be polling locations, and because they're only open temporarily 3 to 4 days. These mobile polling places or locations facilitate voting for people who have difficulty accessing the polls, and rural areas, college campuses, elderly, disabled. More than 11,000 people voted on campus last year. And because Arlington lacks transportation, UTA is especially affected. Students and the surrounding community are really relying on UTA. And I really urge the Commissioner's Court as well as Tarrant County Elections Administrator to please find the resources to allow or include college campuses in all elections in Tarrant County. Voting is a right, and we should all make possible voting as accessible to everyone that is eligible. Thank you.
Thank you. Shirley Adams.
Again, Commissioners Court, I want to thank you for this opportunity to appear before you. I was here also regarding the vote centers, and I'd like to just talk about, there's a lot of confusion, but we all know that voting is one of the keystones of this great democracy. So when people have access to voting, it makes us all a better country. In relation to the 2019 voting, my question is, and I got busy with my life like everybody else, I did not realize the law had changed, that all the voting locations had to be permanent, had to be the 12 days, and they're not going to be any temporary. I understand also that for 2019, or the even odd years, that the colleges had not been used. But I'm also a deputized volunteer registrar. I'm a retired election judge. I go on these campuses, and these students are excited about voting. The amendments to the Constitution of the state of Texas affects all of us. They are talking about this in class. The government teachers are coming down to us. There's a political science teacher who's registering voters at UTA, along with other deputy volunteer registrars. We were on the campus of TCC Southeast and all the campuses in Tarrant County. We have made ourselves available to register. So do not to think that these students aren't engaged. They're engaged. They want to know. They are curious. They are following all of this that's regarding voting. So in anticipation of 2020, I'm also I graduated in graduate school from UTA. So UTA is close to my heart. I was there in the 70s before you all probably went to, well, you might still have been children are not born. It was a
You're talking to the
it was a commuter school. And now we have 7,000 students who live on the campus of UTA in the apartments that are on site in various residential dorms. And most of that campus is on the west side. So to come down to Southeast Courthouse on Abram, we're still going to leave a lot of students out. Also, UTA has a bus system that runs internal to make sure that students can get to class and get across campus. Have we talked to UTA about using that bus system to transport students if you're not going to have one on campus? Now, I support that we have voting locations on all campus. I looked there at the 2018 election. I saw that some temporary vote locations the voters outnumber some for the permanent location. For instance, All Saints Catholic Parish, also the B.J. Clark Annex. We had students that voted and staff, and those who had accessibility to that voting site more than permanent locations. So I want us to always consider, and if there's any change in the law, I got my information off of Channel 8 and the Star Telegram. Some of it might have been misinformation, some of it was good information. But to communicate these changes to the public as a whole, to interview, you are the administrator and the orchestrator of voting in this county. Dallas is for Dallas County. So whatever information that would benefit the voters as a whole, to get that information out, get ahead of the story, get ahead of the misinformation so that we will understand. But we also encourage you to work with all of our polling sites. Give them the opportunity to make the corrections. Give them an opportunity to enter into a partnership to bring that $11,500 if needed for students to be able to vote for their staff. So I thank you. I don't know that it's all cleared up, but I better understand what is going on. But I do encourage you to make voting accessible to everybody. Students, people that don't have public transportation, people with disabilities, and all the rest of us. Thank you.
Thank you. I will add that one of the things that we're talking about as we move toward the 2020 is working with the Trinity Metro about offering free transportation to individuals wishing to vote on election day or in early voting. And I think we'll be bringing to the court in the relatively near future, possibly Tarrant County offering to reimburse Trinity Metro if they will do something along that lines. Next is Fred Darwin from Arlington.
He had to leave.
Okay. He was, again, voting at colleges. Next is Joanne Cardoza. And she had to leave. She was also, with regards to the need to include universities and colleges. I have an Andrea Ray, I believe it's Radar. She did not wish to speak, but supported mobile and early voting at college campuses. Again, as we've said earlier, that's something that we'll look at as we begin to look toward that 2020 election. And then last is Laura Lehman. She also did not wish to speak, but also wanted to be in favor of flexibility for certain locations. I also have a Michelle Cravel, and she wishes to speak, so come forward, please.
Good morning. I still have a couple minutes where I can say that. I'm sorry I was late getting my sheet in, but I had to go feed my meter so that I could still be here. My name is Michelle Crable. I live in Dalworthington Gardens. My address is 4 Rushing Meadow Court, right by the Christmas lights house everybody goes to there. I am both a deputy registrar and a precinct judge. I am a UTA graduate. My father works at UTA. I spend a lot of time on campuses, specifically high school campuses and college campuses, registering people to vote. So this is an issue that's very important to me. Arlington has been my home. I was not born here. My dad was in the military, so I moved a lot. But Arlington has been my home for a very long time, and both of my children were born there. I would like to encourage, as have the others, you to include the college campuses, not just UTA, which is my home campus, but also our Fort Worth neighbors, because so many students, I have a college freshman who's in California right now, do not have vehicles, do not have access, especially in Arlington, to public transportation, as someone said. And this morning we honored Alan Sachs for his work in the political arena, as well as the educational arena, as well as volunteering, which all of those things I'm very active in, and I have great respect for Professor Sachs. And I think an excellent way to honor him is by providing the students that he cared so much about and the community that he cared so much about the opportunities to be involved in the political process. It's very important, and students are excited. I go in and I even talk to high school students. Students are excited about voting, and they want to know. I just got an email from my son. He doesn't email me very often from college. I got an email from him saying, I want to make sure I'm registered. I checked the site, and I'm not 100% sure what I need to do next so that I can vote in this November off year election, not just for president. Next time he wants to vote on those issues that are on the ballot, even from California, because he cares about his home state and his community. So I just encourage you. I have been encouraged by what you've said thus far, that is your intent to make voting as accessible as possible for the students. And I just want to reiterate what others have said and encourage you to be strong in that and to make as many opportunities available for the students as possible. Oh, I did have one idea about getting people to work the polls. You do have a lot of students who are very civic-minded and very involved who would probably be thrilled to volunteer to work polls on campus because they don't even have to go anywhere to work. You need people who are there the whole time, but as an election judge, I schedule people who come in and work for 2 hours or work for 3 hours who can't be there all day, but they can work between classes, and it's a great opportunity for them to actually put into practice and see how the system works from the inside, and possibly then they'll continue to do that after they graduate, and that would be a great way for them to stay involved in the system. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning.
And Dr. Sachs would probably require his students to do it. Just
you are probably right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming out. Thank you all. We did give one other from Trinidad Matson, but she did not wish to speak. But again, college campuses, access to voting, make all college campuses accessible. Again, we appreciate very much the input and all of the conversations. You know, I will assure you that we will begin now to look at 2020, and that I will do, and I think this entire court hears what you're saying with regards to making that accessible. In making it an early voting location, we want to make it accessible to the students, but we also want to make it accessible to the public so that they can come there also. And so that, and Hyder, please hear that we're very interested. I think you hear this court saying we are interested in those campuses, maybe even as recommendations to the parties for the primaries, as well as for the November 2020 election. And Commissioner Allen, I know you said in earlier what you're kind of where you were coming from on this 2019 election. You know, I'm going to go with what we have got at this point in time, knowing that we'll look forward and that I do think we've fulfilled what we've said, is that we're not changing, we're not eliminating. And certainly we're making, I think, on election day, much more accessible all of the voting locations for anybody who wants to go vote. And hopefully there'll be several other very nearby locations to go and vote for at every one of the universities in Tarrant County from that standpoint. Any other discussion or comment?
Yes. So what I've observed, and this is my first time going through this process, sitting in this seat, but then also what I've heard from folks is we wish that we would have had more time so that polling locations could be considered. So can you propose a realistic timeline that would give more time for the community perhaps to provide input, and also for us as a court to evaluate locations? Now I get it may be different for the primary, but still ultimately you provide the draft list and the court approves it, correct?
We can work on it. Just one quick comment.
Okay.
For the primaries, the college campuses have been traditionally utilized.
Right.
So this is the only type of election where they were not included on the list. Obviously, going through this, it'll be in the past, right? And so we will look into that for 2021. But the blueprint we have for March, and which the one we would have automatically proposed to the court would have included will include the colleges already, with the discussion of the potential additional cost. And again, it's a very, it's like asking someone, what are you going to do in Christmas 2024? I don't know yet. Oh, you have no plans. You're not celebrating Christmas. It's different, right? So maybe even preparing the budget, knowing that we had to come up with this money, we would have had ways to work with our budget, and this would have never even been a discussion. We would have been, oh, just so you know, the law changed and they're open there all week. it's getting ahead of the discussion.
And please, and those are very good comments, and I agree with the fact that we'll look at the primaries as well as the 2020. And I'm not saying this just to in any way imply that I'm not going to support going forward on that deal, but our elections right now, the legislature's set things in place that means we may have a lot more elections. But a county-wide election in Tarrant County costs over $1 million. So it's not something that we just go out and let's add a whole bunch of new locations, and so we can, as I said earlier, I believe that we already have more, and you may be able to validate this, and if you can't, then we'll look and see. But I think we have more locations than counties larger than us already. That doesn't mean we're not going to add more to it. But it costs, as you all have already heard, it costs in excess of $11,000 to fully fund and to hold an election, and we're paying over $1 million for elections right now. And so I want to be sure it's accessible to everybody. I think that by us going to vote centers, we're making the election process much more accessible to everybody throughout the county. And I'm excited about us trying this out in this upcoming November election. But at the same time, I'm also, from a fiscal standpoint, going to remain as conservative as I have, I think, in all the time that I've been here. So we're going to look at that, and we may add all the campuses. But as we add all the campuses, I may be looking for sites for early voting that are not voting as many people in an effort to try to be sure we're being cost-wise as well as vote-wise as we go through this process.
Well, and to that point, one, of course, how we use taxpayer resources is hugely important. Then also, no election is inconsequential, right? Like every election is important in us providing that access, which I know we all agree on that. But Hyder, will you just share, obviously there's newness with this election, new equipment, the vote center model. Will you share with us your intention to use the data collected in this election to help guide some of our future decisions?
Correct. And I think we have better instruments in place now, with the new technology, the poll books, to understand how they flow and how long people are taking and waiting in line. And a lot of things will make us have better informed, help us make better informed decisions moving forward.
Sure.
I guess what I would hope, and what I think we as a court said when we started this process, just, for the record, remember, by going to vote centers, we could have reduced the number of locations by 40% in this first election. And what we as a court said is we're not going to do that. And not only are we not going to do it in November, but we're not going to do it in 2020. And quite honestly, I don't envision us doing it in 2021, and maybe not in 2022. But if by the time we get 3 or 4 elections under our belt, if we've got locations that we're leaving open that only have a few votes, then I think we need to have a serious discussion as to whether or not we keep them open or whether we close them down.
I agree.
But I don't think we're going to learn that after one November vote or one 2020 vote.
No, but we'll have a better idea.
Yeah, and so as you ask what the process is in the future, it's to collect those numbers, to study those numbers, and at some point in the future evaluate those numbers, always keeping in mind that yes, we want to make the best use of all the tax dollars that we collect and use for the services that we provide. With that, if there are no other comments, please vote. The motion passes 3-1.
Thank you.
Mr. Phillips, come on down. And again, thank all of you who came out today, who made your comments, and who I think we approached again. We had a civil discussion, and we made a decision. Thank you all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's requested that Commissioners Court approve Amendment Number 5 to the real property lease with Mercantile Partners for warehouse space located at 3333 Quorum Drive, Fort Worth, Texas.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. This is where we're going to store all this election equipment, or?
Yes, Judge. We're going to, this is 25,000 square feet of warehouse space, 28 foot tall. We're going to be able to properly store our new 3,600 pieces of equipment. It takes more space than the other 1,500 pieces of equipment. Also, we're going to be vacating 15 Connex boxes, those large shipping containers you see on the railroad tracks and or railroad cars. And they've been using those for about 10 or 12 years to store elections, equipment, and supplies. It's just not a good environment for voting tables, paper products, and things of that nature. So we're going to be able to get out of the Connex boxes.
We do know that this place is dry. The roof doesn't leak, the floor doesn't leak. There's not water coming in from all
Yes, Commissioner, this is
ancillary sources.
Yes, Commissioner, this is right next door to our current IT Records Management Center. We've been out there since 2008, and it's been a very good experience for us. Got a good landlord, and the building's well maintained.
All right.
Move approval.
Oh, I think we had a motion already, didn't we?
No.
Oh,
Did we?
I thought he made the motion. I second. Yeah.
We had a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Glenn.
Good morning, Ms. Glenn.
Good morning. I made it. Let me ask quick. I'd like the court to receive and file the personnel agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And Judge, if I could take just one moment, please, to remind our employees that we're about halfway into our county health fair today. And so we're going to be out on the lawn. We have a lot of great vendors. We have a DJ playing great music. Of course, we have hamburgers, lean beef.
Lean beef.
Hamburgers. And some giveaways. And so we'll be there, and other vendors will be there until 1 o'clock. And I believe the hamburgers are there until they're all gone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Which hopefully will be not before I get out there.
Judge, I guess you could leave the other 3 quarters.
I'm thinking about it. Vinny, come on down.
Well, good afternoon, Your Honor, and members of the court. I had to remind you guys it is past noon. Public Health has 2 items before you for consideration. First one is we're requesting a approval of modification 1 to contract 2019-041801 with NACHO, the National Association of County and City Health Officials.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Second item is a request for approval for the medical group provider agreement with United Healthcare for healthcare services at Tarrant County Public Health.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Jack.
Ooh, Jack.
You almost got your first win.
You know, I wasn't going to bring that up today, but thank you. Russell Schaffner here.
He left.
He had an announcement to make. His daughter is a new University of Arkansas student. And Vinny made me aware before court that Kathy Andler, who's a A&M graduate, his business manager, had a question for me Friday and chose to not ask the question until after we play. Kathy, I'm not like that, but call Melissa. We have 4 items for your consideration this morning. Our first item is a bid award recommendation for RFP 2019-120, RFP for Records Management System for the County Clerk's Office. Recommendation be awarded to Co-File Technologies, amount of $2,387,059. If approved, we're seeking contract approval from the court.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 2 is also a bid award recommendation for bid 2019-224. Signing a contract for preventive maintenance for on our air handling and cooling equipment. Recommendation would be to award on a per enterprise basis. per hourly labor rate and a percentage markup on parts awarding to the primary, secondary, and alternate vendors as shown in your court communique.
Move for approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Item number 3 is also a bid award recommendation for RFP 2019-236. This is a contract for forensic accident reconstruction, consultation, expert witnesses, and support services for the CDA's office. Recommendation will be toward, per the terms of the contract, awarding to Crash Dynamics. If approved, we're also seeking contract approval from the court.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Last item in regards to RFP 2019-191. This was an RFP for jail staffing and efficiency analysis of the Sheriff's Office. We are recommending rejection of all proposals and suggesting that we rebid with revised specifications.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Schaffner, it's been brought to our attention that you do not have very good taste when you're trying to convince your daughter on where to go to school. You're getting more like on Arkansas and every moment there, just not listening and just, you know.
She's been kind enough to choose one of the more expensive options. So.
Arkansas is expensive.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, cousin.
Commissioner Fickus.
Yes, we have interlocal. We go to it.
Item 9 or 8N1.
The great city of Colleyville. And I will move for approval.
Second.
1AD.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Are there any appointments? There being none, then you have before you the claims including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims including the addendum.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the claims including the addendum. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have one item to bring to you this morning. This concerns the Census 2020 effort. Mr. Alan Sale, who is the Senior Partnership Specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau out of the Denver region, is here to make a presentation to court. After this presentation, we'd also like to have a discussion with you, staff level, as to some recommendations we may have moving forward on this particular area.
Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for that. My name is Alan Sale. I am with the Census Bureau. It is just right around the corner. We want to make sure that we get everybody counted once and only once and in the correct place, but also want to give you some more information about the census. So, yeah, thank you.
They'll do that from the back.
Okay.
Give me a second. There it is.
Is that a short video?
We have no volume.
Volume. Sound.
It's coming. Yes. We're not going to have volume. It's not working though.
Okay.
You want us to stop it and keep going?
Yes, please.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and stop the video and we'll take our slide presentation again.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries. So, first off, what is the census? It is an official count of every person living in the U.S. We do this every 10 years. This is mandated by Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution, that we count everybody that lives in the U.S. every 10 years. This is the 24th time that we've conducted a census. We started in 1790, so we have been doing this for quite some time. But there's a lot of uses for the census data. And it's
Mr.
Yes.
Sale, I'd like for you to emphasize that everyone means everyone.
Everyone.
It does not mean every citizen. It means everyone.
Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution mandates that every person living in the U.S., that we have the meaning to enumerate everybody every 10 years. But thank you very much, sir. There's a lot of uses for census data. One of the largest is the apportionment side. In 2010, as you can see, Texas gained 4 congressional seats. Due to our continuing population growth, we want to ensure that Texas picks up the appropriate amount of seats for the representation needed in this state. Those seat gains can only be achieved through a correct and accurate census count. So we need to make sure that our population is represented. There's also a lot of important other uses for it. It is the basis for drawing district lines of the congressional, state legislature, as well as voting precincts. It is used for civil rights legislation as well as voting rights, as well as a lot of planning decisions at every level of government. And it's critical that our business community, our nonprofits have this information so that they can make accurate and educated decisions for their populations. The census is the basis for $675 billion a year. That's not over the course of 10 years, that's a year, in federal funding for programs such as Head Start, food stamps, our infrastructure funding for road construction, schools, and so many more. And we need to make sure that the state of Texas gets their appropriate funding. This is incredibly important. The census is confidential. It is protected under Title 13 of the U.S. Code. We do not share personal information with other agencies. We don't share them with immigration enforcement, with police, with someone's landlord. This information is confidential. We are a statistical organization, and that's what we use this information for. Everyone that works for the census, from our enumerators that knock on doors all the way to the top of our leadership, are sworn an oath of confidentiality for life. So this is not just during the census, this is for life. It's very, very important. One of the key groups that gets undercounted in the last census, we want to make sure that in 2010 this does not happen, are young children. Over 1 million young children were not counted last census. That is a lot, as you have seen, from funding that helps students of all ages grow and have that federal funding for the state. That's a lot to not be counted. We need to close that gap for the 2020 census. We do have 7.4 million children here in the state. 30% of that are under 5. Our 0 to 5 population is one of the largest undercounted populations. That's why we are trying to highlight that and work to ensure that we close that gap. Now, there's a lot of new things that are available. In previous years, you were not able to respond online or over the phone. In 2020, you will be able to respond in 13 different languages, and we will be sending out literature in February and March to help inform the population on how to respond in those methods. We will still have our traditional methods of response, our mail-in of paper forms, both in Spanish and English, as well as the in-person enumeration where they're knocking on doors to ensure that we're counting everybody.
Will you
Yes, ma'am.
speak to, with the change in moving towards the internet, how you all will be tracking those live responses and then perhaps adjusting your attempts to reach people?
So when people respond online and over the phone, the next day that information is updated so that mailing address is marked as response. That is to help us cut down on enumerators or as well as our mailing to be sent to those addresses so that we are responsible and we're not contacting people that have already responded, because that is a concern for people. And thank you. Some key census dates. We have opened up an office here in Fort Worth on Cherry Street, as well as an office in Arlington. We want to make sure that we have operations in every county. April 1st is census date. As I mentioned earlier, February and March we will start sending out literature on how to respond to the census, as well as a unique code and phone number, a unique online code and a phone number that responders can call in or go online to respond to the 2020 census. We will start our non-response efforts, the people that are going door to door, starting in May through the end of July. We want to give people a time to respond through the other three methods: phone, internet, and if needed, mailing, before we start sending people out to collect responses. And then in 2021, we will be releasing the information to the states to start the redistricting process. So, the other key part of our efforts is, while we have moved to digital and telephone ways to respond, we still have a massive need for a workforce. Our organization has to have over 400,000 employees across the country to conduct an effective census. We are looking to hire people from every community, and we're really encouraging our job efforts. We're still hiring for some of our office positions, and we encourage everybody to go online to 2020census.gov/jobs to please apply. Let anyone that you know that may be looking for a position here in the Fort Worth area. We do have full and part-time positions that pay between $17 and $22 an hour, and for many of the part-times it is flexible, so you do get to make your own schedule. So it's a great opportunity for a lot of different people to work for the census and help their communities.
Mr. Sale, let me ask you a question.
Yes,
on that.
sir.
What is the minimum age that?
18.
18.
And we encourage everybody to apply.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Now, here in Tarrant County, we have started our efforts. We have already formed and have complete counts that are working in Arlington, the city of Benbrook, here in Fort Worth, and in Mansfield. We're still in formation for our complete count committees. These, in the cities of Hearst, Euless, and Bedford, they're going to be combining together to have one CCC. But we need to make sure that we have complete count committees that will be a collaborative partner, not just with the census, but also with the community. We want to ensure that, as I said, everybody gets counted, and these are ways that we can ensure that we have a successful census and make sure that we count everybody.
I would like to add.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
That the city of Grand Prairie does have a complete committee, and as far as I've heard from the mayor and some of their members, so just in terms of updating this to reflect that.
Yes, ma'am. I'll make sure it's updated. Thank you.
What is your policy regarding encouraging cities to have complete count committees? We've got 41 or so separate municipalities in Tarrant County. Is it recommended that each of those have a complete count committee?
Yes, sir. We're trying to encourage each city and town to have their own complete count committees, as well as we encourage various organizations that, if they so desire, to form their own complete count committees to help their communities. They are welcome to form those as well. But we are trying to work with every city here in Tarrant County. This is our response outreach area mapper. This is on our website. If you do go to census.gov/ROAM, this is an area, this is Tarrant County, that shows high and low response areas. The dark blue is low response areas. There's 29 here in Tarrant County. That is areas that have a lower than 75% response rate to the census. That is the dark blue areas. As you can see, they're spread out across the county. We want to make sure that we're addressing those areas and ensuring that we're counting everybody in those areas. There's a variety of different resources. I strongly suggest everyone go to 2020census.gov. There's actually a tab for partners on how you can help get a complete and accurate count for the census in your community, as well as organizations on how they can help us achieve a complete and accurate count. And then if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
When did you say that you could begin to fill the census out online?
You'll be able to start in March online and over the phone.
And then as of April 1, that's when you're going to determine who you mail out to?
That's census, yes, that is census date. What we will be doing is we'll be sending out a series of flyers to every household in waves to encourage them to respond to the census online and over the phone. If they still don't respond after 3 flyers, they will be sent out a paper copy of the census.
I think that answered my next question of how are you going to get to those folks who you don't know are here? So you're sending them out to all the residential mailing addresses?
To all the mailing addresses. We are finishing the final stages of our address canvassing stage, which is the goal to ensure that we have a complete list of addresses, new constructions, and areas that we don't currently have on our roster.
And when I met with one of your colleagues, I don't know, maybe it was a month or so ago, Cynthia Cruz,
Mm-hmm.
she said that you all were hiring for address canvassers. Are you all still hiring for that?
No, our operations are coming to a close. We are still hiring for our enumerators, and we will start making the selections at the beginning of the year. But again, with confidentiality and a lot of other process of the process, it is time consuming. So we do encourage everybody to apply now.
Did you have other questions? Okay. Can you share with us how folks who are homeless or unsheltered, how are they accounted in the census?
We have a program that works to identify where homeless populations or those that have are transient congregate, and we have a program that is specifically to enumerate them separate from the April 1st date.
And what about people who are incarcerated?
They fall under what we call group quarters, which is also included in college dormitories, where we count them where the correctional facility is or where the dorm is located, so that we're trying to educate, especially college students, for example, that they are to be counted where they reside. So if they attend UTA and live in the areas around that area, that they would not be counted at their home address with their parents or others, that they should be counting themselves in Arlington, for example.
There's been a lot of discussion about the undercount and what that means from a dollar standpoint. So maybe it was a month or so ago, the state demographer, he just gave a rough estimate that, for each undercount, each Texan that's undercounted, that's approximately $1,000 every year for 10 years. Do you have a more exact number, or how do we get that so we know what that looks like?
$1,578.
$1,878. All right. Thank you, GK.
So you mean that Russell Schaffner's kid who's going to Arkansas is going to cost us $1,500 a year because he chose or she chose to go, I guess she chose to go to hillbilly country.
Or
it is. Nobody knows how to count.
No, and that, I mean, I'm going to joke with him, but I'm serious about it. If one of our children are going to college outside of state, you mean the out of state, they get credit for that versus us?
Correct.
Then we get students here.
Because for part of that is that we are also bringing in students and other.
Yeah, but they're going to stay in Texas because they're going to realize how great we are. They're not going to stay in Arkansas because they realize how pitiful they are.
No,
He's
I'm
got
not.
personal
But
beef, so.
but it is the great state. So, but it is with if we do have an undercount. Those numbers per person. I know that there's various groups that have done that have calculated the per person cost or value, however you would like to look at it. And those are for 10 years. With college students, we do recognize that while they may not be here living by the next census, there will be someone that is going to be in their place, as it were, in the next.
It is not inconsequential where a person is counted. There's a lot riding on where people are counted. And for someone to, by definition, be counted at some place other than their permanent residence has consequences about redistricting, allocation of federal funds that is not reasonable. That's an arbitrary, extremely arbitrary and perhaps even capricious decision. Doesn't make any sense to me.
It is what it is.
It is what it is, but it's dumb.
Let's say I live here and I have a son going to school in Arkansas. Are there instructions to me as a parent, my, let's say an 18, 19-year-old son, are there instructions on those to tell you not to count him in your home because he's going to be counted at college?
We are trying to educate the community on that.
But are there...
Even though he votes here.
I see a problem.
I see another problem. My computer's fixing to restart.
All right. Go
It
on.
just did.
It is what it is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate this being a briefing item. It's something that I've talked about for months, not for months as it being a briefing item, but I have and my staff, we've met with and had conversations with the various municipalities and Precinct 2. I think this is one of the most important things that we will have the opportunity to do is make sure that we as a court support the census, and obviously I know we'll hear from staff. I have some ideas for things that we could be doing, and I know they'll offer some too.
We'd like to talk a little bit about those right now if possible. So, Mr. Schaffner, you'll come forward. Also, as he comes
I'm
forward.
going to have a hamburger here pretty quick. And
I understand. We're not going into closed session today. Okay. But we also have this on the Mayor's Council agenda for next Monday, and we'll be making a presentation to them. Commissioner Brooks, you pointed out the 41 different cities. I really think whatever we do at the county, we're going to need to assist the smaller towns.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Manius. And again, wanted to thank Mr. Sell and also introduce Elisa Dodenhoff. She is
Thank you for being here.
make sure I'm right, the Fort Worth area office manager for the Census Bureau.
Correct.
So she'll be a key stakeholder as we move forward with all this. Wanted to, I believe Mr. Manius sent out a memo late last week. We're going to begin with the creation of a Tarrant Counts work group, where we'll pull in various staff members from across the county, departments and elected officials' offices. Your offices will all be invited to participate in that. Our goal, we have a few goals with that group. One is to make sure that we're disseminating all the information out to our various county departments and elected officials. So the folks that they touch, whether it's through the county clerk's office or through elections or public health or your commission offices, that information, we have a network and a way of getting that information out. Another one will be assisting our cities and towns, the 41 that we've talked about, making sure that the folks that do have a complete count committee, any way that we can participate with them, continue on and piggyback with that, but the folks who do need more assistance, for us to be able to lend hands and be effective there. And then the third, we have approximately 80,000 individuals within our unincorporated area. We want to make sure that those folks the information is able to get out to those folks. So we will be doing that, working with them as well. We'll send out invitations to a meeting, I believe, later this week. If y'all want to go forward with this and continue moving forward with this. But it's been a great opportunity, and the U.S. Census Bureau has really been great partners as we've been working on this. So any questions?
What's the goal for this first meeting, the goal date? Around what time?
Hopefully within 2 to 3 weeks. Okay. It will be within October.
One of the things we're also have some representation on some of the cities' committees. I know Mr. Merrick is our representative for the city of Fort Worth, and hopefully we can partner with them also so that we can take our resources and use them as effectively as possible. If the cities have a major effort going, well, then we may need to use some of our resources in those areas that don't have it. But I think it's going to be a good idea that at least on a monthly basis that we brief you all, come to court, brief you all, talk to you where we are. Obviously, we'll be talking with you all in between those times, because I really see your all's offices becoming fairly involved in this process.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rose.
Your Honor, as I said, we're not going to go into closed today.
Okay, so with that, and there being no further business at this time, we're adjourned. Get your hamburger.